Morning. We're still in Judges. Be there for a little while. And I want to ask a terrible, terrible question. Did anybody read Judges?
Oh, I read.
No, I mean like recently. Yeah, I've read Judges before. Yeah. Did anybody read our lesson? Read what's, because it helps a whole lot if you have some background.
Well, I studied the part of it up until about Samson. But what's in this week's like lesson? Samson was.
Yeah, you remember we finished up with Samson and Delilah.
Yeah, I marked where we're at, and I read about Samson and what is it, where he killed the lion, then he killed the Philistines with the jawbone and all that. I read that part.
Well, we did that last week. He was strengthened by God. God's power came upon Samson, and he was had superhuman strength. We could have sung if you had been up here earlier, but yeah. Debbie has just come up from the Sunday school area, the kiddo Sunday school area downstairs. So she's back here. You can't see her, but you can hear her sometimes. Samson and Delilah. Everybody, I'm assuming everybody knows the story of Samson and Delilah. Oh yeah, I turned it on this time. Yeah. I review our stuff every once in a while, and I keep telling the people in the camera that I forget to turn them on, but today I turned them on. And Samson was the guy who was dedicated to God, set aside or consecrated to the Nazarite vow that no razor should come upon his head, and God had special stuff for him to do. And the angel of the Lord tells this to his mom to be. His mom follows the directions that she's not supposed to come on any unclean thing, and has Samson, and Samson grows up to be a real strong guy, superhuman strength. And we just kind of like a real quick recap. He's the one that he wants a Philistine wife, and we got all these people here. You can't pick a wife from among the Israelites. No, I want the Philistine, the one that I'm not supposed to have. And they acquiesce, and they go get the wife, and they go where they have a 7-day wedding ceremony, feast, party thing, and while he's there participating in the festivities, he proposes the riddle. The riddle states that he's the one that he killed the lion, and he came back and he finds honeybees in the lion's carcass and eats the honey. And he shouldn't have done that either, because that's an unclean thing. That's he's defiling himself, and he defiled his parents because he gave it to them and didn't tell them. But let me find the riddle. Out of the eater came something to eat, and out of the strong came something sweet. And he says, if you can tell me the riddle, I'll give you all 30 changes of clothes. And all the 30 guys can't figure out the riddle. And they go to his wife and say, you find out, and we're going to burn you in your house with fire. So we're going to snuff you out. And so she whines and complains and tells him that he doesn't love her. And so he tells her, and she immediately goes and tells them. And he is upset. Says, you wouldn't have known. You ask my wife. She shouldn't have known. She shouldn't have told him. She's under threat of death. It's a bad situation all the way around. So Samson goes down and he kills 30 guys and takes their clothes and gives him. Now, one of the things we ended up with was, does God use your unbelief, your disobedience? Does God use your disobedience to further His kingdom?
He works everything out for His plan, period.
It's like by trying to prevent it, you cause it. You can't. Now, that being said, if you know God's will for your life, I think it would be very unwise for you to go against it. You know right and wrong. You know what you're supposed to do, and you know what you're not supposed to be doing. So you ought to be about doing what God has for you to do, and about not doing what you're not supposed to do.
I said that, let me put in that it never gets rid of the consequences to the person who chooses to disobey God. But he can work everything to His plan.
Yeah, it's like you have do's and don'ts, and like I say, we know right and wrong. Don't ever think that because you didn't die on the spot or something bad didn't happen right then that you got away with it. God used it, maybe used it, that's fine. But that didn't make it right. God's a really good CPA. That's certified public accountant. And he keeps good records. Now, that's not a ledger of good and bad, one outweighs the other. It's just that there is an accounting. Now, if you're saved and you repent and you accept Christ as your Savior, your sins are forgiven. Now, you're already saved and you've already accepted Christ as your Savior, and you still sin. And you go back, God, I've sinned. Like the prodigal son. I don't deserve to be a son. I deserve to treat me as a slave, and the father puts the robe on and puts the ring on his finger. No, you're my son yet. What was lost is now found. We always have the opportunity to come back to God. And you don't lose your salvation once you've had it. But there are consequences. Now, Samson is very much like his ancestors, and we are very much like they are, or they were, in that we don't learn. Or we learn very slowly. Very slowly. You go on, Samson, he becomes the judge of Israel for, I think, 7 years. I'm not sure, it's a short time. And later on, he never has he left that wife back when he went over to kill the 30 guys and take their clothes. And he goes back for her after a period of time and finds out that her dad gave her to somebody else. So he's mad at the Philistines, and that's where he kills a whole bunch of people with the jawbone of the donkey. And time passes. Time passes, and he sees Delilah. Doesn't say where she's from. Where do you think Delilah is from? Is she an Israelite woman?
Probably Philistine.
Well, why do you suppose she's a Philistine woman?
Because that's who he seemed to like, Philistine women.
It's better, Philistine women don't have big noses, or what? I would say that she's a Philistine woman because the Philistine people came to her and said, "Hey, Samson's sweet on you. Find out what his power comes from. How he's strong. Find out what you can find out. Play up to him." Now, I don't think that they would have access to an Israelite woman, because they didn't live there.
It also says here that she was from the valley of Sorek, and that would be
the land of the
the
Philistines.
land of the Philistines. Like you say, it said the Philistine came under her, and so she would have been a Philistine. My guess would be.
And we're just going to go over this real quick so we get to today's lesson. I assume she was. It doesn't say for sure. But a while back, when he was going to get married, and the woman pesters him, and he tells her the riddle. This is like they just rewound the tape. Where does your strength come from? Oh, if you tie it with a cord of something, and if you do this, or if you do... And each time when she says, "Samson, the Philistines are upon you," he jumps up and beats the snot out of all of them. So she says, "You don't love me. You don't love me. You won't tell me the truth. You think I'm stupid." And Simon Q. Idiot tells her, "Well, if they shave my head, I'll be weak like any other guy." So he goes to sleep, shaves his head. "Samson, the Philistines are upon you," and they come and they take him away. He's got no power, and now they've been waiting a long time. They don't like Samson. Samson's been beating up on them for a lot of years, and they gouge his eyes out, and they put him in, and he's doing the work of an ox. He's turning the millstone. He's grinding it away, and they're all coming to mock him. And some period of time passes, his hair is growing back, and he's in the equivalent of their little Colosseum thing there. And in your books it tells you, it says, this is where they came to be entertained. They watch them torture people to death, and they watch games, and they, it's kind of demented. This is what they go, and they had like a roof. It was supported by wooden columns, and they sat on the roof to observe. And Samson gets down between the columns, and they're all laughing at him, and he pushes the columns out. He asks God, "Please, this one more time, return your strength to me." And he pulls it down. They all fall in. They fall. They're hurt by the fall. They're crushed by the debris. And the account says that he kills like about 3,000 people there, more than he's killed during his entire career of killing Philistines. And so ends Samson's time. But Samson didn't learn, at least not at first. But he did turn around. He came back. "God, please restore it to me now, so that I can have revenge on the Philistines." Well, it's not his to have, but God allows it. And the guy dies doing it. He doesn't get to have the satisfaction of his revenge. Which brings us up to chapter 17, 18, and 19, which is today's stuff. Well, there was a man in the mountains of Ephraim whose name was Micah, and he said to his mother, "Here's 1,100 shekels of silver. I'm the one that stole it." She gives it back to him. She ends up taking 200 shekels of this silver and gives it to a silversmith to make an idol and a graven image. You're just coming off of Samson and Delilah. You're just coming off of a guy that God has restored. And you have this Micah And it goes through great pains to say, this is when they had no king. And everybody did what they thought was right. Okay? Everybody did what they thought was right. Now, what's the verse that tells you about what you think is right? It's not in here. I forget where it's in the book, but it's not in this chapter or anything.
Our ways are not God's ways. His thoughts are higher than ours.
Yeah,
one?
that's not the one.
Okay.
There is a way which seems right to man, the end thereof is death. Close. I don't know if that's just because I think it's right doesn't make it so. So, here's Micah. His mom makes an image and a carved image, and he has an ephod made so he can have his own private God. He has his own God that he made, or he had made. How would you like to have a business? Come on in. For a fee, you tell me what you want, I will make your God for you. How can this seem right? How can you think that something that you made or you had made, that some guy made for you, you set it up, now that's God? I mean, how could a heathen even think that?
But it's been going on since the beginning of time.
It has been. And it's so amazing. It is so stupid. It's amazing because it's stupid.
But we set up things that are gods. You know, yeah. I mean, maybe our car. You know, that people, you know, they spend all their time on their car. Or maybe sports, or maybe their family. Whatever. They make that God and then they worship that. So it's kind of the same.
Watch television.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be anything real outrageous or odd. If God isn't first, then He's not your God. Something else is your God. Whatever it is. How many people only come to church when there's nothing else to do? Or you can't do anything else, so, well, we might as well go to church. Come to church doesn't make you saved, but it is indicative of like other stuff that's happening. Anyway, this guy Micah puts himself up his own special little God, and chapter 17, verse 7. Now there was a young man from Bethlehem in Judea of the family of Judah. He was a Levite and was staying there. The man had departed from the city of Bethlehem in Judea to stay wherever he could find a place. Then he came to the mountains of Ephraim, to the house of Micah, and as he journeyed, and Micah said to him, "Where do you come from?" "I'm a Levite from Bethlehem in Judea, and I'm on my way to find a place to stay." And Micah said to him, "Dwell with me and be a father and priest to me, and I will give you 10 shekels of silver per year, a suit of clothes, and your sustenance." So the Levite went in. And the Levite was content to dwell with the man, and the young man became like one of his sons to him. So Micah consecrated the Levite, and the young man became his priest and lived in his house, in the house of Micah. Then Micah said, "Now I know that the Lord will be good to me, since I have a Levite as a priest." See, I got my own little connection here to God. Now, Bill, I know that even you have seen the movie Patton. Everybody saw Patton. Okay.
Yeah, you got one there.
Got one. Now, everybody saw Patton. And Patton wants air support. And the weather's bad. And he calls the what's the priest and the chaplain. He calls the chaplain. And he says, I know you're in good with God. You're in good with God. I want you to write me a prayer for good weather. And he's not going to take no for an answer, so the chaplain writes a prayer. I don't know if he prayed the prayer, but Patton prays the prayer. He's got it written on a piece of paper. Actually, I saw a documentary a few years back. Some guy had a copy of this prayer written on, it was on a piece of paper. And he said, yeah, it even works now. You just rub it. And the weather, oh yeah, it's like the magic prayer. Evidently God honored it. The weather changed. The invasion went well. But this is the way people think. You've got... What I have's got nothing to do with what you've got. My relationship is not your relationship. God's relationship with me is not your relationship with God, or the lack thereof. Now I know God will be good to me. Will be good to me since I have a Levite as a priest. The Levites had cities in which they were supposed to live at that time. This was where God assigned them. The Levites were the priesthood. And here's this Levite, not where he belongs. He's not where he belongs. There's a guy, you grow up, you devote yourself to God, and you get taught, and then you become an evangelist that's going to sell sweat rags for a living. You're not doing God's work. You're not doing what God called you to do. I don't know what you're doing, but that isn't, there are some things that are very specific that God said, I didn't call you for this. If God's word says that it's wrong, you're supposed to be in one of these cities. You're not supposed to be out here in the mountains of Ephraim. But he's there. And this other moron, Micah, hey, you're a Levite. Yeah, it says here, it has it in the glossary. As more, it says, hey, you're a Levite. You're in good with God. Why don't you come on into my house and stay with me and be my private priest? And I'll treat you like a son, and I'll give you 10 shekels of silver a year and clothes, and I'll feed you. And that's cool. Chapter 18, in those days there was no king in Israel. In those days the tribe of the Danites was seeking an inheritance for itself. For until that day their inheritance among the tribes of Israel had not fallen to them. So the children of Dan sent 5 men of their family from their territory, men of valor from Zorah and Eshtaol, to spy out the land and search it. And they said to them, go search the land. So they went to the mountains of Ephraim. So the Danites are out looking for some place that they can conquer. And they end up at Micah's house. And these are Israelites out helping God. our inheritance hasn't come to us yet, so we're going to go find some inheritance and take it. They're not where they're supposed to be. They're not going where they're supposed to be going. They're not listening to God. They're helping God. And they end up at Micah's place, and they recognize the young priest's voice. They say, hey, you're a priest. We're going to go down and try to take his land. Will God be with you? Fear not. God is with you. Oh, Gabby, you're good. You're in good. I don't know if this guy prayed. It doesn't say he prayed. It doesn't say he asked. I don't think that his prayer would have been answered anyway, at least not by God, but it doesn't say that, and that's Jim's opinion. And they say to him, you're a priest. You used to watch Have Gun, Will Travel. Remember Paladin? On his card. It says, Have Gun, Will Travel. I'm a gun for hire. Have ephod, will travel. Okay? You're in good with God. Why don't you come with us? And we'll give you, I forget what it says they'll give you. I know we'll go and we'll be. Verse 5, so they said to him, please inquire of God that we may know whether the journey on which we go will be prosperous. The priest said to them, go in peace. It doesn't say he did anything. Go in peace. The presence of the Lord will be with you on your way. So the 5 men departed and went to Lash. They saw the people there dwelt in safety. And anyway, they go back and they take the land because the people that lived there were kind of like out on the fringes of the kingdom of the Sidonians, and there wasn't anybody there to protect them. And you have another bunch of people that have fallen off the wagon. Now we come to today's lesson. A Levite and his concubine. This is chapter 19. And it came to pass in those days when there was no king, and it says that when there was no king all the time, everybody's doing what they think is right. There's no king in Israel that certain Levites staying. This is a different Levite, by the way. In a remote mountains of Ephraim, took for himself a concubine from Bethlehem in Judea, but his concubine played the harlot against him, and went away from him to her father's house in Bethlehem in Judea, and was there 4 whole months. And then her husband arose and went after her to speak kindly to her and bring her back, having his servant and a couple of donkeys with him. So she brought him into her father's house, and when the father of the young woman saw him, he was glad to meet him. Now his father-in-law, the young woman's father, detained him, and he stayed with him 3 days. So they ate and drank and lodged there. And then it came to pass on the 4th day, he arose early in the morning and stood to depart. But the young woman's father said to his son-in-law, refresh your heart with a morsel of bread, and afterward go beyond your way. So they sat down, and the 2 of them ate and drank together. Then the young woman's father said to him, please be content to stay all night. Let your heart be merry. And when the man stood to depart, his father-in-law urged him to, so he lodged there again. Then he arose early in the morning, the 5th day, to depart. But the young woman's father said, please refresh your heart. So they delayed until afternoon, and both of them ate. And when the man stood to depart, he and his concubine and his servant, his father-in-law, the young man's father, said, look, the day is now drawing towards evening. Please spend the night. See that the day is coming to an end. Lodge here that your heart may be merry. Tomorrow go on your way early so that you may get home. However, the man was not willing to spend the night. The guy finally learns a little bit. He's going to stay here forever. He was not willing to spend the night, so he rose and departed, and came opposite Jebus, which is Jerusalem. With him were the 2 saddled donkeys, his concubine also with him. And they were near Jebus, and the day was far spent, and the servant said to his master, come, please let us turn aside into the city of the Jebusites and lodge in it. But his master said to him, we will not turn aside here into a city of foreigners who are not the children of Israel. We will go to Gibeah. So he said to his servant, come, let us draw near to one of these places and spend the night in Gibeah or Ramah. And they passed by and went their way, and the sun went down on them near Gibeah, which belongs to Benjamin. And they turned aside there to lodge in Gibeah. And when he went in and sat down in the open square of the city, for no one would take them in the house to spend the night. You kind of got to get the flavor of this before we go on. The servant says, let's stop here. He says, no, they're not Israelites. I want to go to where the Israelites are. I want to stay with our people. So they get to Gibeah, or however you say it, which was a Benjamite town. It belonged to the Benjamites. And nobody will take them in, so they're staying outside. They're in the square. Now, verse 16, just then an old man came in from his work in the field at evening, who also was from the mountains of Ephraim. He was staying in Gibeah, whereas the men of the place were Benjamites. When he raised his eyes and saw the traveler in the open square of the city, and the old man said, where are you going, and where do you come from? So he said to them, we're passing from Bethlehem in Judea toward the remote mountains of Ephraim. I am from there. I went to Bethlehem in Judea, and now I'm going to the house of the Lord. There is no one who will take me into his house, although we have both straw and fodder for our donkeys, and bread and wine for myself and for your female servant, and for the young man who is with your servant. So there is no lack of anything. The Benjamites were Israelites. Now, the old guy who's staying there and finds them in the square knows that they're not nice Benjamites. They are men who are lovers of men, and you can't stay out here. Come stay with me. And so he does. Verse 22, as they were enjoying themselves, suddenly certain men of the city, perverted men, surrounded the house and beat on the door, and they spoke to the master of the house, the old man, saying, bring out the man who came to your house, that we may know him carnally. But the master of the house went out to them and said to them, no, my brethren, I beg you, do not act so wickedly. Seeing this man has come into my house, do not commit this outrage. Do not commit this outrage. Look, here is my virgin daughter and the man's concubine. Let me bring them out now. I was like, how's this better? You have a bunch of guys that want to have sex with the guy that's staying at the old man's house. So the old man says, don't do this. Don't commit this outrage. I'll give you my daughter and his concubine. You can have them. Like I say, this is better. This is, I don't know why I don't know why they do this. It doesn't say why. It seems to me that they should have been finding sticks or something to poke at these people with to get them to go away. Or at the very least say, hey, my door's shut. You want anything, you got to get in here first. And anybody sticks his hand in or his head in is going to lose whatever comes in first. I'm going to hit it. That's not what happened. guest, the man who's been traveling with his concubine, takes her out and gives her to them. And they use her all night. And when the guy wakes up in the morning, he gives him this girl and goes to sleep. Evidently not bothered. Maybe this is why she left him in the first place. Went back to her dad. I don't know. Doesn't say. But you know for sure that what was going on wasn't right. It wasn't right. The story goes on.
Gets worse.
Yeah. Oh no, she's already dead now. They find her dead on the doorstep. He tries to get her up, and he finds out she's not going to get up. He picks her up, puts her on the donkey, takes her back to his house, and he cuts her up into 12 pieces. And he sends it out to the 12 tribes. I don't know. Did the Benjamites not know that this stuff happened in their city? Do we not know? Now in next week's lesson, you're going to find out they're going to have a big war, okay? This is like, I sent you a chunk of my girl so that you know what happened, and now aren't you outraged? Shouldn't you have been outraged before? Did you not know? Did you not know? Okay. Fast forward today. Do we not know? Look at the stuff that we know about and don't do anything about. I don't say you can't cure everything. You can't fix everything. But there are things that you can fix. There are things that you can stand. What's that green shirt? I had it on yesterday. It says, "No more. No, I will not be silent." All it takes for it's evil to succeed is for good men of conscience to remain silent. Okay? Don't sit down and shut up. You don't have to be contentious with everybody that you meet. But you do have an obligation to do what God has for you to do. And God has stuff for everybody to do. And you can take your cue as what not to do. I mean, there's a whole lot of stuff, the blind could see that this wasn't right, but yet it happened. The old man was just as misguided as the traveler. And these are the ones that, no, we don't want to stop that city because they're not Israel. We'll go to our family. We like them. And he said, "Oh yeah, we like you too. Come on down." It's like, we really like you. So, well, I'm sorry, I don't want you to like me like that. It's all this stuff happened, and it was okay.
It was evidence of their depraved minds. If you look today, that we have been programmed to get more depraved and more depraved and more depraved and more depraved, when 30, 40 years ago, we would never put up with what we put up with today.
Because you get intimidated. You get intimidated a little bit at a time, and you are prejudiced. You are bigoted. You are any one of a slew of names that you will be called when you tell the truth.
You're intolerant.
Oh yeah, you're intolerant. The most intolerant person is the person who wants you to be tolerant of them. They will absolutely not stand for your disagreement. You're not allowed to disagree with anything unless it's good. If it's good, you can disagree with that. That's okay. New TV show coming on. GCB. The original name and what the initials stand for is Good Christian Bitches. That is what it was to be named. And they couldn't get that to fly, so they just called it GCB.
Is that Channel 4?
I don't know what it was on.
The commercial?
But
It's about women in a church. And
well, I don't care what it's about. It doesn't make it, just the name in itself.
yeah,
Now, can you, nobody went down with bricks and broke the producers' windows and poured into their studios and started rioting and beheading people. Now, can you imagine if it was GMB, Good Muslim? What would have happened? Or if it said any one of, if it was black, if it was homosexual, if it was anything other than Christian, what would have happened? Now, had the Christians gone down and rioted and burned and looted, look at those terrible Christians. Had any other group done it, they're protesting for their rights. Okay? And so what do? We don't do anything. And we should be doing something. I don't know if you're supposed to go down and burn their place to the ground. I don't know if you... But... yeah.
if it happens,
Evidence, this will be evidence at your trial.
But something should be done. Something other than tuning into it. You have this guy traveling. Yeah, they'll have us handcuffed together.
turn that camera on, Bill.
No, I'm saying something should be done. This guy turns into the Benjamite city. He doesn't know. Then he finds, maybe he didn't know. I don't know. They didn't have the internet. They didn't have, that didn't say, beware you're going into Jamestown. No. It's Cape Cod. Cape Cod? Where Jimmy was very uncomfortable.
Provincetown.
Provincetown. Yes, everybody there is different. And we didn't know. And we went in and there it was. Okay? So we left. It's like, so he goes to the old guy's house. They don't protect themselves. They needed to do something other than what they did. Pastor John was here. One of his expressions, even though you disagree with whoever, you can learn something. He says, this is not a fight. No, don't stand and die here because this isn't worth dying for. But you see, some things are. This is where you make your stand and put up or shut up. Take on whatever's coming and do whatever you can do before they take you out. That means go down and visit your senator. Go sit in his office. Go talk with your congressman. Call your councilman. You can do those things. You can be the thorn in their side. Or you can be the support for the one that's fighting the right fight, fighting the good fight. You can help them fight the fight. As opposed to just leaving them like Uriah the Hittite. David says, go put him down where the fighting's really hard and then withdraw from him and let him get killed. This is like murder by proxy or something. Don't leave them out in the weather. Don't leave them just dangling there. Help them. And by the same token, the ones that aren't doing great, hurt them. Fight against them. Be in their face. These guys weren't. So they're kind of like the example not to be.
God sure lays it all out on the table, doesn't he, when he just puts in every...
Oh yeah, it's not varnished over. It's not varnished over. It's stuff hasn't changed. It hasn't changed. We think that we're modern. We think that we're not like, we're every bit like that. We are identical. And we do the same stupid things. You say, what's it mean to us today? Take the example and don't be like that. And take the good examples and be like those examples. Go to war next week.